Welcome back to Bachelor Nation's favorite podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram at E&G Podcast. Available now are previous episodes with Bachelor favorites including Luke Pell, Ashley Iaconetti, Robbie Hayes, Leah Block, and much more. Plus, this season with Nick, we're bringing you weekly recaps, Bachelorette interviews, and exclusive offers from friends of the podcast. Thanks for listening.
You at E&G, you guys are getting out there, man. You guys are diligent.
I'd say with Lace, it's dicks over chicks, 100% of the time.
I wanted her to be happy, and what choice that was up to her.
I'm busy. I'm in it to win it. I just love them. They're so fun.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Ian.
Today's episode of the E&G podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Clothing by Owl. All you Bachelor fans will recognize this name as they are the company behind the hugely popular Wine Bachelor and Yoga Pants tank top. What you may not know is that they give back a percentage of every item sold to Animal Rescue, and that notable Bachelor alums like JoJo Fletcher, Caitlin Bristow, Lauren Bushnell, Ben Higgins, and Nick Viall are all huge supporters. We're happy to offer our listeners 20% off when you visit clothingbyowl.com. Simply add the discount code ENG, that's EANDG, to save on all your Bachelor gear. And be sure to follow them on social media at Clothing by Owl.
Jeff and I are doggy dads, which is why we're so excited to be partnering with our newest sponsor, Puppies Make Me Happy. They have a super simple mission to make the happiest clothes on earth, which they do. And we know our listeners will love this brand just as much as we do. Plus, we're excited to help spread a little happiness ourselves by offering listeners 20% off all merchandise by using discount code ENG. That's EANDG at checkout. Make sure to follow them on Instagram at Puppies Make Me Happy.
Welcome back to the ENG podcast, another special interview edition, this time with Canada's first Bachelorette, Jasmine Lorimer. We got her, Ian. The Bachelorette Canada, Jasmine Lorimer.
We did it. So our first official Bachelorette or The Bachelor. And so this was a lot of fun, man. We've been trying to lock down Jasmine for some time now. She recently just wrapped the first season of The Bachelorette, like you mentioned, which we found out was being filmed actually at the same time as JoJo's season. And, you know, there was a lot of drama in the season that she had. We got into all the big storylines from that. But Jasmine also watches Nick's show, right? And so she's up to date on all the drama that's happening this season with Nick. And so even if you're not familiar with Jasmine here in the States, I think this is a really fun conversation that you guys are going to enjoy.
Definitely. It's the Bachelorette Canada, also known as the Bachelorette, eh? It was a great conversation. We wish her and Kevin the best, and we're really pulling for her and Kevin's mom to come close.
Hey man, it sounds like that drama has all concluded, and dude, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time talking with Jasmine. I know we're gonna get her back on the pod soon, and again, hope you guys enjoy this.
Hello.
All right, we got it worked out. Welcome to the podcast.
God, thank you. Oh.
Before we start, I just want to make sure I don't like messing up anyone's name. So just the pronunciation is, if I have it correct, Jasmine Lorimer.
That's exactly it.
Okay, perfect.
Nailed it, Jeff. Nailed it.
Don't want to mess that up the whole time.
So what's up, Jasmine? It's great to chat with you.
You
so
too.
we are very happy to welcome you to the show. You are Canada's first ever Bachelorette, and we're going to definitely get into that. But before we do, you and I confirmed that you're watching this season with Nick. So we have to start there. And you came out on Twitter recently in support of Vanessa. And I know that you guys are both Team Canada, so you got to stick together. But is she still your front runner? Do you guys have a relationship outside of the show?
No, we don't have a relationship out of the show, but we are Instagram pals and Twitter pals. And I don't know if she watched my season or not, but yeah, I'm pretty much Team Vanessa. She seems really cool, and yeah, she's Canadian, so I got to go there. But even if she wasn't Canadian, I think I'd still be Team Vanessa.
Nice. We like Vanessa too. What do you think about Nick as the Bachelor? Have you been watching the Bachelor for a while?
Yeah, okay, well, yes. I went through a phase where I hadn't watched it, and then before I went on to my season, I watched like binge watched a lot of all of the seasons.
Right.
But I actually was really excited for him to be Bachelor because I liked him even when everyone else was kind of not liking him that much. Like when he was on Caitlyn's season, I really liked him.
Okay.
I felt like he was really expressive and kind of sensitive, and I liked that. And I don't know. I don't want to be negative, but I feel like he's letting me down.
Oh, why's that?
Because I feel like this is just my theory. I think that he's been on the show for so long, like he's been within the franchise for so long that he's too conscious of everything that he's saying. Like he's too conscious of himself.
I can kind of see that, yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like it seems like he knows how everything is going to play out, so I feel like he's monitoring himself a little bit too much, and it doesn't feel as natural.
I see.
But then there's moments where where I really like him. Like there's moments where I feel like he forgets to do that, and those are my favorite parts.
Right. And were you paying attention during the whole announcement? Like where they kind of teased, oh, is it going to be Luke? Is it going to be Chase? And then it was Nick?
Yeah, I was.
What did you think about all that?
I was glad that it was Nick. I don't know. I couldn't really choose between. I didn't want it to be Chase. I would have rather had it be Luke, I think. But I was glad that it was Nick. I thought that would be an interesting little twist.
It was a twist, and we're finding out that even many of the women that are on this season, they kind of went into it thinking it was going to be someone like Luke. There's been some interesting stories. I mean, I guess some of the drama surrounding Nick right now, too, is maybe just a little bit having to do with his charisma or lack thereof. How do you think his approach has been so far? Like, if you were to give him some advice, what would you tell Nick to do?
God, I just want him to look them in the eye. Like, there are times where it's so awkward. Not even that he's not looking them in the face when he's talking to them, but his whole body is like turned away from them.
Totally.
Oh, it's bonkers. But so that I think he could work on a little bit. But I feel like that's also weirdly part of his charm.
It is. I mean,
kind of that awkward nerd, you know?
Exactly. I'm glad you said that, right? Because obviously he's been able to make it all the way to the finale. This guy has a history on the franchise. Women like Nick. So we're missing a little bit of something that must be there that's happening off camera. But hopefully we get to see more of that open up as time goes on. And also, Jasmine, we heard that you recently had some comments about Corinne saying that you actually didn't think that she was too bad, right? Maybe that she's just on the defensive. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, yeah. Okay. So I mean, we can all agree that she approaches things in this way that it would irk. I think it irks women more than it would irk any guy, and especially not Nick. But yeah, like when you really think about it, at least we don't see her being mean or cruel to the other girls. She seems to actually get along, especially if you watch any of the bloopers, like especially that last one where she was eating chocolate with them and being goofy. Like it doesn't seem like there's really any animosity that she's projecting at the girls. It's just she did with Taylor, but Taylor came at her first, and Taylor was kind of a bitch. So,
so you do think Taylor was kind of what the word you used?
Oh, she was being so condescending. It was annoying. I was just like, shut up.
There's definitely some tension. And so, I mean, of course you're going to have that, right? There's going to be some strong personalities in the house that are going to clash. I think, though, that you bring up a really good point. I mean, it seems as though a lot of the women are still friendly with Corinne after the fact, that there wasn't too much drama there, right? And Taylor kind of came up out of nowhere, it seemed. What do you think it was about Taylor that was kind of rubbing people the wrong way?
I think it was the fact that she was behaving kind of immaturely and like using her sexuality to get Nick's attention, and that he was responding to it. I don't really think it had a whole lot to do with her. I think it was more the way that Nick was responding that the girls were uncomfortable with, and they can't take it out on Nick. They kind of, I don't even know if they realized. This is just my theory, but I think that, I don't know, I'm just putting myself in that position, and I think I would be annoyed at her. But if I really thought about it, it's like she's just doing her own thing. It shouldn't really matter how she's approaching it. But I think it would be frustrating when Nick is actually responding in a positive way to it.
Right. I wanted to ask you, you sort of brought it up, putting yourself in the situation. You were the Bachelorette, and you had a bunch of guys vying for your attention. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to be vying for just one guy, like if it was flipped, like how would you approach it? What would your game plan be?
I know. I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I'm saying all this stuff, but I have no idea what it would be like if I was a contestant. I think that I would have a hard time with it. I think that I'm like too emotional to be able to go into that and let everything be in someone else's hands. Like, that's got to be the hardest part, is just not knowing. And I think that's what a lot of the girls on the last episode were frustrated about, because they felt like they just needed to talk to him and they had no time and they wanted to get in his head and figure out what's going on. It would be so hard to sit there and not know every day.
Totally. So maybe the last thing we'll chat about with Nick, and we might come back to this topic, but do you have anybody that you really feel like maybe is your top 2 at this point that you would be surprised if they weren't there at the very end?
You know what? I really love Vanessa, but I feel like I like Vanessa, Raven, and Rachel evenly.
Okay.
They're favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
those are they're strong women. I feel like maybe there's a little bit, there's something that connects all those women, right? I think they definitely do stand out a bit. So totally fair. Cool. Well, so we also want to chat with you about the fact that, are you still living in Vancouver, by the way?
I moved up to this tiny little town north of Vancouver called Pemberton. So I'm near Vancouver, but I'm in this like little mountain town right now.
Oh, very cool. Is this kind of like maybe more of like a ski resort type area?
Yeah, it's right north of Whistler, actually. So it's the town that I'm in is not actually, it doesn't have a resort, but it's like a lot of backcountry skiing and stuff like that. It's beautiful. So it was my little break away from Vancouver.
Very cool. Well, once you get back to Vancouver, you have to meet our guy Daniel McGuire that was previously we had a chat with him, and he mentioned that he's never had a chance to connect with you, I don't think, in person. Is that right?
I don't know. And I think we might even have some mutual friends, but we've never met. So maybe one day. We've exchanged words here and there, but we've never met.
Good. He's a good guy. He's a good guy, Daniel. He's a funny guy. So we mentioned it at the top of the call, but this was the first season of the Bachelorette Canada, and we wanted to ask you, what was the process like to get onto the show?
For me, it was kind of weird. I just moved to this little town, just kind of like a hiatus from the city and from, I don't know. I was kind of just on like a little soul searching mission. And I met a girl who happened to have a cousin who worked for the casting department of the production studio. And she just messaged me one night and was like, "Hey, do you want to be the Bachelorette Canada maybe?" And I was like, "What?" And then ended up setting up a Skype call, and then soon after met with the production company, the executive producer, director, did a little interview. They sent that to the network, and it was like within 6 weeks I was gone. So it was a really quick thing. So it was kind of like, I think he saw like some Facebook pictures or something, and then that's sort of how it all began. And at the time I didn't even know that they were casting, so it was all very like quick, and I didn't have much time to prepare, which I think would be a good thing. But.
Oh yeah, probably good to not overthink it. How did your family and friends, how did they react when they found out you were going to be the Bachelorette Canada?
Well, I couldn't tell them at first, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I told my mom and my sister, but anyone who knew had to sign an NDA, and it was like very hush hush. And we filmed the entire season, and then like a couple months later is when the announcement actually came out that I was even the Bachelorette. So it was like everything was really secretive for a long time. We were filming while JoJo's season was filming, actually, but then we had to wait a really long time for it to air. So.
What was the immediate reaction? Is your sister older or younger?
She's older than me. She just laughed really hard.
Okay.
When I told her. And my mom was excited. Like, she was like, "Oh, that'll be cool." And I don't know if anyone was taking it too seriously at first. And then obviously when they got brought in and they met everyone, and I had been gone for a couple months, then they realized it was real. But
did you have any guys that maybe you were talking to casually that you had to kind of cut off because you were about to be the Bachelorette?
No, that was the thing. I had moved away, so I was just hanging by myself and doing a lot of, my own thing. But I had been wondering, now that I've moved away, wondering what my next step was going to be, how I was actually going to meet anybody. So it was interesting timing for the whole thing.
And so what is like your relationship history? Are you a relationship person? Did you have a long relationship? Did some guy cheat on you? Do you want to call that guy out right now? What happened?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I've dated all types of guys, and some were jerks and some were really great. And I think that, like I've been in some longer term relationships, but never like a 6-year relationship or anything that ended like 3 years, 1 year, that kind of thing. And I don't know. I think that I was trying to figure out what I wanted, and when there was someone that was really good, I felt like I wasn't in the place where I was ready to fully be the best that I could be. And then other times when I felt like I was ready, it seemed like they weren't, and it was always this like weird back and forth. And I feel like I've dated all types of men, a variety for sure. So I was ready to step into the variety of the show.
The social experiment that is the show. Totally. So, and we, this past season, Jeff and I, we were following the recaps. We saw clips throughout your season as it was airing, videos. We did not actually watch every single episode because they don't air it here in the US. So get on that, US. What's going on? But we're definitely familiar with kind of like your journey, right? And how that was. And it looked like you traveled to some great places. And so you went to places like Jamaica and Morocco. Were there any moments that have stayed with you from your travels on the show?
Oh God, there were so many beautiful places that we went to. I loved Morocco. Like, I had always wanted to go there. So when I was told that we were going there, and I found out, right before I told the guys, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we were going. And we stayed in Marrakesh, but we weren't in this like little resort. We stayed in riads, and not all of us could fit in one. So I think there were maybe 3 that the crew and everyone stayed in. And it was right in the like hustle and bustle of this like old town. It wasn't in like the fancy part of Marrakesh. So it was really cool because you felt like you were really submerged in the culture, and there was this market down the street, and it was really neat. It was cool. I loved it.
No, that sounds awesome. And we have to ask you too. So do you enjoy traveling just outside of the show in your personal life?
Yeah, that's I guess partially why I moved to this little town, is that when I was living in Vancouver, although I loved the city and my career there was really great and everything seemed awesome, I found myself always wanting to get out. So I would travel. I would just go by myself sometimes, or just impulsively take a trip because I wanted to get away from the city and see some neat things. So it's been a while. Like the last time I actually traveled, I guess, was on the show. But I definitely spent a lot of time trying to get away to as many places as I can.
It's so funny, right? It seems like whenever we chat with anybody from Canada and just on the podcast, or I grew up in Seattle, so it was so close there. I had some friends in the Vancouver area. I feel like you guys are very much like, yeah, let's go see the world, let's travel. In the US, that's not necessarily a thing. So it's always interesting. But
I know it seems like that. Hey, Canadians are a bit like that. Australians are like that too.
I think that's a great point. What is your favorite place you've ever been to? So even just off the show in general, do you have a place that you loved traveling to?
Yeah, I really liked Bolivia. It was very far away. Like, it was one of those places that felt like you were really in another country and there was not a lot of familiarity. So I liked that. And it was like kind of grungy and kind of scary, and I liked Bolivia. And there are all different types of like landscapes and stuff within that.
Definitely. It's a little raw, a little real. Yeah. Sounds like maybe that's what you're into. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the season a little bit that you just went through. So you started with 20 men. I believe after that first night you were down to 15, but that's still a lot of men vying for your attention, right? What was, I guess, the entire process like? What was that like, that first night being there? Was it a little surreal? What did it feel like?
Oh God, it was so cold out. And I was wearing that dress and standing there and freezing. And it was weird. I felt like it wasn't even me standing there. Like, everything felt very out of body almost, because it was just such a crazy situation to be in. And I didn't know what to expect. And I didn't know anything about the guys. And the guys did not even know who I was at all. So they would step out of the limo and see me for the first time. Like, like the first ever Bachelor in the US.
Totally. Well, I mean, that's what I wanted to ask. That it's got to be surreal. It has to be. And I recall that Kevin, who you ultimately ended up picking, was, I think, the first one out of the limo. Is that correct, or is that just how they showed it?
Yes.
Oh, they actually put him first. Okay.
No, that's actually true. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And I think he came and gave you a high five. Was that which was good.
I actually hate high fives, but in the moment it was cute.
Okay, so that didn't knock him down though. Okay, that's good to know. What was your favorite entrance? Was there one that really stood out to you that first night?
Oh, there was Chris, who is an inventor from Calgary. He came with this rose that burst into flames, and underneath it was an actual rose. So it was like he had built this, I don't even know what it was made out of, but maybe paper or something, a rose. And then, it just combusted, and then all the petals fell off, and underneath was an actual rose with a flame in the middle. It was cool.
Whoa. That sounds awesome. Did you keep that?
No, I didn't. There were a lot of things that I kept just scattering them around the mansion because I didn't know what to do with them. And then some of them I lost because I was tucked in couch cushions and stuff.
Dang, those are going to end up on eBay for sure. So it sounds like too that the drama, that there was some drama throughout the season, but really a lot of maybe the public outcry, if you will, happened based off of your ultimate decision, right? And so what kind of response did you get from that? I think that was.
Oh man, the funny thing is that it, as bizarre as it seemed to have people so passionately angry at me for making the decision, in a way I also understood. Like I felt like it was unnecessary, but I was like, okay, I definitely get it. Like I get it. I think the thing was that Kevin was he was expressive off camera, and it always drove me nuts. And he would whisper things to me, or I don't know, Mikhel was very much more open about how he felt all the time. And Kevin was a little more can't be too sensitive. And that drove me absolutely crazy. And I would tell him, I was like, if we end up together, my family and friends aren't going to like you because you don't seem like, you don't say anything on camera that you say to me off camera. So I think he was a little reserved. And so people only see what they see. And to them, it was like, oh, Mikhel's much more involved emotionally than Kevin. And it wasn't necessarily the case, but it was just, they're so different. And I can understand, because even while I was watching it, I was like, oh, wow, you could really see how much Mikhel cared. And with Kevin, I knew that he cared, but it wasn't as obvious when you're watching.
That is such a tough thing, especially with relationships, because I mean, you guys are forming a connection, but this is a TV show, right? So the expressiveness plays a huge factor. I could totally see why people would be maybe falling in love or pushing for Mikhel. It looks like you guys had a chance to connect after the final rose. He has a girlfriend now, I know, so he was the runner-up on the season. You mentioned at the time, I believe, that you weren't potentially over him, that you had fallen in love with two people. And that's tough, right? I mean, that's a lot like what Ben went through, I feel like, with him and JoJo. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. You know what? And before we filmed that segment, I had just watched for the first time the finale and a couple episodes prior to that. Oh my God. And it was just so emotional for me. And it's true. If you're really in it and you feel those feelings for two people, which maybe in normal life you wouldn't be feeling, but you're in a position where you're encouraged to feel that. And also you want to feel that. I wanted to open myself up completely. And I knew it was my only chance to ever do this. And I was like, I'm going to take it seriously. I'm going to treat each relationship as its own thing. But in the end, it felt like that was the harder thing to do, because then I really did feel like I was in a relationship with two people and had to say goodbye to one before I was maybe necessarily ready to do that. But then I knew that I couldn't say goodbye to Kevin. It was this completely weird thing where I knew that I loved Kevin, and ultimately he was the one that I wanted to be with. And I knew that, but it was still so hard to end a relationship with someone that you care about that much. And it's just a dynamic that is not something that you typically would go through. So
absolutely not. Yeah, it's definitely got to be weird.
Yeah. So,
I can see that being hard.
Yeah. So that was difficult. And I think because all of the emotions were so fresh when we filmed that, and I had just seen the episodes and stuff, I was just like taken right back into those moments. And so that's why everything was so raw. And I think for all of us, it was that.
Totally. So, and I mean, since then, so you guys obviously faced, I mean, maybe not negativity, but just a little bit of, the public having comments about your relationship, which has to be weird as well after the show wrapped. Did that ultimately bring you guys closer together? How do you feel like that's been since the show has been over?
It actually did. It did. People were incredibly mean to him. Like, people were sending him death threats and being so crazy and horrible, and just, I don't know. I knew that what people were saying, it was out of line and really exaggerated, and I knew that people didn't really know him, and so it made me feel a little bit protective of him, and it did bring us closer. We had to go through this crazy week. We canceled all of our press stuff for the following day because we were just so emotionally drained after the finale and stuff, and so it was pretty hard. But after that week, we just took some time to be together and kind of fall off the grid, and that was probably the best thing that we could have done. So yeah, and everything's really good now. It feels like a normal relationship.
Well, I was going to ask, so how are you and Kevin doing now? Everything is great?
Everything is really good. Yeah. It's hard because we're doing distance, but we've actually been lucky enough to see each other pretty often. We haven't gone more than a few weeks, maybe 4 weeks without seeing each other. So, and that feels like a long time, but when we would see each other, it's like for a week or so. And he was out here for 2 weeks, and we've been doing that for like 9 months now almost, which is pretty crazy.
Jeez. So do you guys plan on moving in together sometime soon?
Yeah, like my plan is that I'm probably going to move to Toronto. It's hard to imagine because it's just so pretty out here. You lived in Seattle, so you know what it's like. But yeah. Where are you guys now? Where are you living now?
We're both in the LA area. I'm from Southern California, but Ian grew up in Seattle and then moved down to Southern California when he was, I think, 14 or 15.
Try 16, but thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, if I gave a shit, maybe I would remember that. So
that's a beautiful spot. And Toronto's nice, but it's just not as scenic, being by the ocean, the mountains and all that. So it's something I'm trying to wrap my head around, but I definitely think it's worth it to do and at least try. So, yeah.
What is it like getting to know Kevin more off the show now that the cameras are gone? You guys can, have more of a normal thing. Are you, learning a bunch of new stuff that you didn't really get to learn about him on the show and vice versa? How's that going?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many. I mean, we're just figuring each other out. It's nuts how the relationship kind of gives you that, the show gives you that initial idea of how you could be as a couple. But once you're actually together and you're spending time, then there's so many more things to figure out about each other and how you argue and how you deal with issues and how you what you like to do together, because everything's kind of set up for you. So it's been a lot, but it's been really good. And every day it feels like it's getting better. We're getting to know each other better and kind of sinking into each other's personalities because we're quite different people. So, it's kind of interesting in that way.
So, we heard that your mom and you and Kevin's mom, you guys had a little bit of drama, right?
Yeah.
And how's that now?
Well, at the
that's
time,
smoothed over?
Yeah, it's actually fine. At the time, I didn't realize how negative she was being, and I didn't see what she was saying to the camera and everything when she wasn't around me. So when I saw it on the show, I was like, oh, she is being kind of mean. But at the time, I was kind of blinded by my attraction to Kevin, and I didn't really care. I understood that she would think the scenario was weird, so I wasn't that thrown off. And rewatching it, I was like, okay. But
has she said anything to you about what she said on camera?
No, you know what? No. But I did see her last week, and she said that I forget what exactly she said. She said something about how she said other nice things too, and that's true. She did say some nice things too. But to be fair, she was mostly that is what she was like.
Jeez.
So I don't know if she I don't know if she remembers that it actually was like that or if she thinks it was edited that way, but it was pretty much like that.
Has Kevin said anything like, "Hey, my mom, she blah blah blah," like kind of covering for her, or is it just kind of out there still? Seems like it's out there still a little bit. Just listening to your tone, talk about it.
No, I mean it's because I get asked about it so much, but she, no, it's not. Like, she's actually a really sweet lady. Her personality is like she's got a dry sense of humor. She's, she is like a little high strung, kind of like Kevin is a little high strung. That's just sort of their personality. So it's. Yeah, but she's actually really sweet. She really cares about her kids, and she likes to be really close with her kids' girlfriends or wives or whatever. So we text here and there and stuff, and she's a good lady.
You guys are cool. I mean, come on. Okay, so it sounds like you guys might have squashed some of the initial beef.
The funny thing is that to us it didn't feel like there was beef between us. I think it was just her being skeptical of the situation, but I never really felt like she was frustrated with me personally or anything like that. So, and it never felt like that. And after, when I saw her for the first time after, she like gave me this present and was being really sweet and motherly and everything. So
totally. And if she's protective at all as well, right? I mean, it's kind of a weird situation, like with the cameras, and I'm sure she's thinking about, is he going to be hurt at the end of all of this? So you can kind of see where she's coming from too, I guess. But so Jasmine, we're going to get you into a lightning round that Jeff has prepared here in a moment. One question that I had for you before we do was, you mentioned earlier that you kind of binge watched some of the past seasons. Yeah. Do you have a favorite past season? Was there maybe a favorite Bachelor or Bachelorette that really maybe resonated with you?
Okay, well, I really liked Caitlin's season, just because I found her to be really entertaining to watch, and So.
Oh yeah, I mean, she's the ultimate boss and a fellow Canadian, right?
Exactly.
So, do you know each other maybe outside of the show? Have you had a chance to meet?
Yeah, it's funny because she actually, because I'm a hairstylist and I worked in Vancouver, and she was a client of my salon. So I had never talked to her, but she was my colleague's client. So I was like for a couple of years. So I knew her. But
wow,
I wasn't like friends with her or whatever.
So that's before she was on the show?
Yeah, before she was on the show.
Wow.
I remember. Yeah. Okay, this is really funny. I never told her this either because we talk now, her and I. But okay, so way back. Okay, so when did she go on The Bachelor? It was like, when would that be? Like, it would have been like what, 3 years ago?
Yeah, maybe 3 years ago, because she was the Bachelorette right before JoJo, so just a couple years.
Okay, so when she was going on The Bachelor, she was in the salon, and Mikhel, who's the hairstylist who she was his client, she was in there getting her hair done, and I was like, oh, and she wasn't on the show or anything yet. Like, I don't even think she was like officially cast. And she was in there, and I used to follow her on Instagram just because I thought she was really cute. I didn't even know her. I just like, I don't know if I had mutual friends with her or what, but I followed her on Instagram. So I saw her in there, and I was like, well, there's that girl that I follow on Instagram. She probably thinks I'm such a creep. And then after she left, Michael was like, oh, my client's going to be on The Bachelor. And I was like, Canadian Bachelor or U.S. Bachelor? And he's like, I think the U.S. one. She's going down to Los Angeles. And I was like, oh, that's a big deal. And then next thing you know, she's in, third on the show. And then next thing you know, she's Bachelorette. So, yeah, before she was even on The Bachelor. And I used to follow her on Instagram.
That's so random. It's so random. So did you reach out to her when you knew that you were going to be the Bachelorette Canada just to get some advice? What was that like?
No, I didn't actually, but she reached out to me while the season was on, and she kind of was just like a little bit like my Bachelorette guardian angel, because there were times where I was so stressed, and she kind of would help me out and explain to her things that she had gone through and everything. So it was nice to have her, and she still pops once in a while to check in. So
yeah, it's a great resource to have. So Jeff, are you ready for this?
I am ready. Jasmine, it's time for the lightning round. I write these out. Okay, so they're all random. You just say the first answer that pops in your head. No thinking for the politically correct answer or what you should say, okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go. I think this might be the longest one I've ever written. All right, and we're starting. Toronto or Montreal?
Toronto.
Canada or the United States?
Canada.
Indoor activity or outdoor activity?
Outdoor.
Beach wedding or castle wedding?
Beach.
Beer or liquor?
Liquor.
Whiskey or tequila?
Whiskey.
Whiskey or vodka?
Vodka.
Heels or sneakers?
Sneakers.
Skiing or snowboarding?
Skiing.
Treadmill or cycle bike?
Cycle bike?
The gym, Come on.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to write that.
I
Oh, you're saying cycle bike is the answer. Okay. Hair up or hair down?
Hair down.
Tall, dark, and handsome or short, pale, and rich?
Tall, dark, and handsome.
Come on. Okay. Red.
Red.
Short, pale, and rich is the new thing. Red or white wine?
Red.
Nick or Luke?
Nick.
Vanessa or Rachel?
Vanessa.
Jim Carrey or Mike Myers?
Jim.
Couple of Canadians. Okay. Relax on the beach or go on a hike?
Oh, tie.
Win the lottery or start a business?
Win the lottery so I can start a business.
Wow, okay. That was a weird way to combine them. Rollerblades or roller skates?
Whoa, roller skates. I've never been on them, but I want to.
Okay. iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone.
Netflix and chill or Amazon Prime and grind?
I've never used Amazon Prime. We don't have that in Canada.
Okay, well, I went out on a limb on that one. That was the last question, so the lightning round is over.
Oh, that was good.
That was good. You combined some answers.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
I thought that was excellent, personally. So, Jasmine, we wanted to get you out of here on this as well, just by asking you what's next. What's next for you, right? So, do you want to go back and become a hairstylist again? Are you pursuing other interests? What are you working on now?
I think I'll always do hair because I actually love it so much, and I don't think that I could eliminate that part of my life. It's like my social part, my creative part. But I don't really know. Honestly, I'm just going to kind of see what happens. I'm probably going to move to Toronto. I'm not really thinking too much about pursuing anything else in television or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of see what comes my way and go from there.
All right. So we always like to give everyone at the end, if you want to tell everyone your social media stuff, or you have Snapchat or Instagram, whatever you're on, or if you're doing any charity work, whatever people plug, anything you want to plug, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, my Instagram is jasmine.lorimer, so JASMINE.LORIMER. And I use Twitter and all that too, but you can find it on there. So, yeah.
Perfect. So, Jasmine, too, we mentioned social media. One of the things Jeff and I like to do is ask our guests, do you have any interesting, fan interactions? How have people been on social media? Have you received any weird or funny messages? Do you have any funny stories that you'd like to share before we get you out of here?
I mean, I get this recurring message from a French Canadian fellow who sends me videos of him like holding the camera really up high, but on his face, and he sends me kisses, like he's wearing no shirt, and he'll say something in this heavy French accent and then send me little smooches.
That's not weird at all. That's awesome.
Yeah, normal.
Might be the most normal thing we've ever heard. Just constantly sends you videos.
I haven't had one for a while, though. They're pretty good.
Oh, well, he'll listen to this. He'll be like, she wants
say,
more videos?
He's definitely going to listen to this, so that'll be good. Jasmine, we really appreciate the time today. It was such a pleasure. We look forward to chatting with you again, and we'll make sure to include all your info into the show notes as well.
Okay, cool. It's nice chatting with you guys.
Yeah,
right,
thanks so much for being on.
Okay, you're welcome. Talk to you guys soon.
Hey guys, one last thing. On Instagram, make sure to check out and follow our friends at Bachelor_Nation, who we've teamed up with along with our sponsors to run giveaways and upcoming promotions, which include Skype dates with previous contestants. Thanks so much for listening. Today's episode of the E&G podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Clothing by Owl. All you Bachelor fans will recognize this name as they are the company behind the hugely popular Wine, Bachelor, and Yoga Pants tank top. What you may not know is that they give back a percentage of every item sold to Animal Rescue, and that notable Bachelor alums like JoJo Fletcher, Caitlin Bristow, Lauren Bushnell, Ben Higgins, and Nick Viall are all huge supporters. We're happy to offer our listeners 20% off when you visit clothingbyowl.com. Simply add the discount code ENG, that's EANDG, to save on all your Bachelor gear. And be sure to follow them on social media at Clothing by Owl.
Jeff and I are doggy dads, which is why we're so excited to be partnering with our newest sponsor, Puppies Make Me Happy. They have a super simple mission, to make the happiest clothes on earth, which they do. And we know our listeners will love this brand just as much as we do. Plus, we're excited to help spread a little happiness ourselves by offering listeners 20% off all merchandise by using discount code ENG. That's EANDG at checkout. Make sure to follow them on Instagram at Puppies Make Me Happy.
I'm killing it.